I am a rather nerdy person. Some of you will not be surprised by that statement, but some of you may be shocked and appalled. What? No, I never would have thought that. No way. I have always been bookish and sensitive, for better or for worse. When I was a child, I felt like everyone around me was speaking a language that I couldn't understand. And people knew it. My peers knew it. I'll be honest with you, I was bullied quite a bit as a child. I was easy to bully, frankly. My two older male cousins had the unfortunate lot in life to be the youngest in their families. They had older brothers who pummeled on them, and so at every family gathering, Christmas or Mother's Day or Thanksgiving, they would take it out on me when they got the chance. I say this not to make you feel sorry for me, but to let you know that as a child, I had my own list of friends and enemies. And my enemies were people that I thought really hurt me. People that I wanted to hurt back. People that I wanted to get back at. People that I wanted to see retribution done upon. It's perhaps the most human desire that we have, the most universal urge to meet justice upon those who wrong us. We love stories of vigilantes, don't we? Robin Hood, steal from the rich, give to the poor. Zorro, the Lone Ranger. And we love revenge stories, don't we, folks? The Count of Monte Cristo, a 1,000-page novel by Alexandre Dumas, is one of the best-selling novels of all time, and all 1,000 of those pages are full of elaborate and bloody revenge plots. But you don't have to go back that far. Quentin Tarantino wouldn't have a career if it weren't for revenge stories like Kill Bill or Django Unchained. And there are all sorts of other great revenge stories out there. The End of the Odyssey, Shakespeare's Hamlet, Revenge of the Nerds. We love a good revenge story. We love to see justice meted upon our foes. We would love to get back at them if we could. I am currently adjunct teaching a theology, a gen ed, undergrad theology course over at Palm Beach Atlantic University, a couple blocks down that way. So I might get a little professorial with y'all this morning. If you don't mind, I did warn you that I'm a nerd. So there was a political philosopher who based his entire political philosophy on this very idea. It was a gentleman by the name of Carl Schmitt. And he came up with something called the friend-enemy distinction. The friend-enemy distinction. In a polis, in a state, in a political community, we ought to do good to our friends, to those who are like us, to those who share our culture, our values, our language. And we ought to do bad to our enemies, those who are not like us, those who do not share our values, those who are different. The friend-enemy distinction for Carl Schmitt is the fundamental principle of human politics. More on that anon. Some of you may even know where I'm going with that. Suffice it to say, that is not the principle upon which the scriptures are based, not the principle that God in Jesus Christ sets forth by his life, his death, and resurrection. But we don't have to go to the New Testament for that. Here's another revenge film. Anyone seen John Wick or one of those 4 movies with Keanu Reeves? Okay, Alec has seen it. Thank you, sir. He's a retired hitman who is robbed by Russian gangsters, and just as a little extra on top, they kill his dog, and he goes after them, and the whole movie is him getting revenge on them for robbing him and killing his dog, which, to be frank, fair. But Keanu Reeves, when he was asked about this film, he said it's an Old Testament revenge story. An Old Testament revenge story. That's so interesting to me because we just heard a story from the Old Testament, and it was not about revenge. It was not about revenge. It was about the opposite. Now, unfortunately, I don't have an hour and 15-minute long lecture to recount to y'all the story of Joseph, but I would highly encourage you to read it. It's one of the best stories in the Bible and one of the clearest prefigurations of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's in Genesis chapter 37 to 50. They're short, they go by quick. And if you don't want to read the Bible, just watch Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, all right? You'll get the idea. But suffice it to say, as Joseph says today, he's in Egypt in the position that he's in because his brothers sold him into slavery. He was the little cousin, the annoying little cousin. His brothers were tired of him. And so they, like older brothers, like older cousins, said, let's mess with this kid a little bit. They throw him into a pit, and then Judah, from whom Jesus would later be descended, says, well, he's no good to us down in that pit, or he's no good to us dead. There's some Ishmaelite traders over there. Let's sell him and make $1 or $2. Then we'll just tell Dad that he got eaten by a wolf or something. So that's what they do. Joseph has a series of misadventures in Egypt. He goes lower and lower, but he has a gift. He's a gift from God. He is a dreamer and one who interprets dreams. So he interprets the dreams of 2 of Pharaoh's servants. He makes predictions, and they both come true. Pharaoh hears about it. He's been having bad dreams too, and he sends for Joseph, and Joseph interprets his dreams, and he says there's going to be 7 years of plentiful harvest and 7 years of bad harvest, 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh says, you're my guy. I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom, my brother. And so Joseph is vizier. He's prime minister of Egypt. And when the 7 years of famine come, who comes crawling to Joseph but his big brothers? The famines even reached their land. Now, by this time, it's been a few years. So Joseph's a little older. It's been at least 7 years, as a matter of fact. He's a little older. Plus, the Egyptian fashion was to shave all the hair off the body. So Joseph is bald, his Semitic beard is gone, and he's probably wearing some kind of ostentatious perfumed wig, right? In addition to his Egyptian cotton and his gold rings and accoutrement. So they don't recognize him. Now, if this were a Quentin Tarantino movie, Joseph would lock the doors and start letting the heads roll. But he doesn't. Not going to be honest with you, he messes with them a little bit because he's only human. I mean, come on, you know. But eventually he breaks down. And as we saw in our passage today, he weeps and he throws his arms out and he says, it's me. I'm Joseph. Tell my dad I'm alive. And not just that, forget about all of it. He says, I know you sold me into slavery, but what does he say? He doesn't say, you sent me here. He says, you sold me here, but God sent me here. You sold me, but God sent me. You sold me, but God sent me. So come, I'll feed you. I'll give you land for your flocks and herds. Come live with me in Goshen in the Nile Delta in the most fertile portion of the land of Egypt, and we'll be happy together, and all will be well. So much for Old Testament revenge stories. Instead, we get a picture of precisely what Jesus talks about. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. And wouldn't you know it, Jesus becomes the new and greater Joseph. Jesus, the son of the earthly Joseph, becomes the new and greater Joseph. Jesus, like the Joseph before him, had enemies. The Joseph before him could have treated his brothers as enemies, for they were enemies to him, his own family. But he embraces them as friends. When Jesus tells us things like, give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. When he tells us to do things like turn the other cheek, when he tells us to lend without expecting to receive back, how many of us actually do that? At least consistently. How many of us only love those who love us? How many of us wish evil upon those who abuse us, or even abuse others ourselves? In violating these commandments of Jesus, we betray him. We betray him as Joseph's brothers betrayed Joseph. And as RJ pointed out, when Jesus came to earth, sometimes he was welcomed with acclamation, but at the end of the day, we shouted, crucify him. We nailed him to that cross. And we said, good riddance. Another troublemaker gone. But Jesus, though we had treated him as an enemy, does not treat us as enemies. Friends, maybe you're looking for a Joseph. He's here. He is here. In his life, death, and resurrection, Jesus is the greater Joseph who welcomes us with loving arms, who embraces us, who forgives us, who says, what you meant for evil, God means for good. I mean for good. You know that guy I mentioned earlier, Carl Schmidt? You know when he lived? World War II. Do you know where he lived? Germany. Do you know who he supported? Adolf Hitler. That is the fruit of drawing distinctions between friends and enemies. That is the fruit of saying, I will love those who are like me and like me only. That is the fruit of drawing a line and putting yourself on one side and the scapegoat on the other side. And that is not what Jesus does. Jesus breaks boundaries. Jesus looses the chains. Jesus does not treat his enemies as enemies, but embraces them. And by embracing them, he forgives them. He neutralizes their evil and their sin, and he renders it powerless. And by throwing himself upon the evil of the world and embracing it, he renders it powerless. Friends, and I say friends and I mean it, this greater Joseph looks at you and calls you a friend. He does not seek revenge. He does not get mad or get even. He welcomes you. He seeks you. And I pray that he has found you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.